The election is finally here, and tomorrow, people who cast their vote will receive one of those I voted stickers. Actually, with such a crazy election, they're going with a different sticker this year, so that happened.
The final polls from the major news outlets show Hillary Clinton with anywhere between a 4- and 6-point lead, or, as Huffington Post reported it, a 46-point lead.
I promised you that I would not rest until I became your vice president. That turned out not to be true. I have rested a few times since then. I've been on this pillow. I had to. You know, I've been fighting my critics to the point of exhaustion. They said I couldn't launch a solo run for vice president. They said it was a waste of time. They said it was illegal. Were they right? Definitely. Did it hurt my feelings? Yes. Did I cry? Yeah, I cried a lot. But I have not wavered from my mission. I have never wavered from my mission. And before you go to the polls tomorrow, I want to remind you that a vote for Jimmy Kimmel is a vote for a good, solid number 2. And who doesn't want that?
We all love a great, solid number 2. A bit of late-night humor here to round out our first hour. Welcome back to America Talks Live. I'm Bill Tucker. Polls are tightening in many swing states before everyone goes to cast their ballot. We want to know what's going to happen. Well, at least this will be a day by the end of which we will have a definitive answer. To dissect the numbers and the prognostications, we are pleased to be joined now by the senior partner of John Zogby Strategies, John Zogby. John is also the director of the Keenan Center for Entrepreneurship at Lemoyne College. He is also the author of We Are Many, We Are One, Neo-Tribes and Tribal Analytics in the 21st American Century. Also joining the conversation, Newsmax TV anchors and hosts John Bachman and Miranda Kahn from down in Florida. Great to have you all with us. I want to start out by looking at the latest polls. And it's kind of fascinating. The IDB poll, the International Business Daily poll, which is generally regarded as being somewhat the most accurate, has Donald Trump in the lead at 45% to 43%. But then we go to the Washington Post ABC News Tracking poll. Hillary's on top at 47 to 43. If we go to Rasmussen, we've got Hillary still on top, 45 to 43. And if we go to the CBS News poll, Hillary Clinton is up 45 over Donald's 41. John, we've got the polls in essence being all over the place. I have never trusted these polls during this election, and I'm not quite sure why. Let's spend a little bit of time talking about what these polls are telling us, and if in fact we can discern a winner from looking at these as they tighten going into the final day here. John, what make you of all of these polls?
It's too close to call, and I'm being consistent everywhere I go and whoever it is I talk to. Look, I'm going to grant her the average of a 3-point lead nationwide and growing, you know, to 3.3 percentage points. But I look at the individual states and it's trending in the opposite direction, either tightening up so that where she had been leading by 10, she's leading by 2, or a slight Donald Trump lead. Whatever it is, these battleground states and the nation are just simply too close to call. And anybody who tells you otherwise is just not paying attention to what's going on in this country.
Let's take a look at what John's talking about, because we have 2 state polls. Let's start with the Florida state poll. Down in Florida, Quinnipiac says Hillary Clinton has a 46-point lead. She has 46. She has a 1-point lead. 46 to 45. Almost committed a HuffPo mistake there. And then in North Carolina, we have Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton tied at 44 apiece. This stuff is getting really, really tight. And John, it certainly appears totally accurate that it's too close to call. John, I'm wondering if John Bachman down in Florida, well, I'm wondering what you see. I know that you're keeping an eye on things as we begin to move through the day. I don't know that we have enough really to discern anything at this point, but certainly we've been talking about this for several days. I'd love to hear what your observations are.
One thing, Bill, that I think is going to be very different from 2016 versus 2012 is that we are going to find out in states like Florida, North Carolina, who the electorate dislikes least. The most of the votes that are coming in here late, we've seen the polls, and I think I voted this morning myself, and my polling location, it's tiny, but it was packed. I think a lot of folks waited to vote because they simply do not want to have to make a choice between one of these 2 candidates. I saw a poll recently that said 82% of the nation was disgusted with these 2 choices. And so that vote is going to be critical today in places like Florida. A lot of the early voting that's come in so far, a lot of the totals that we've seen, those numbers were hard baked into what we were going to expect. And I look at numbers, when you look at early voting numbers in Florida, in certain minorities, the African American vote in Florida is up almost 10% this year. We've heard about the black vote being down in places like Michigan. It's up 10% in Florida. The Hispanic vote, and John Zogby can probably speak to this better than I can, up close to 90% higher than it was last time around in 2012. I just don't see how Donald Trump can win the state of Florida if these early voting numbers turn out to be accurate, which I'm focused more on these numbers than the poll numbers at this point, because I think there's a more foreseeable trend in those specific numbers. And John Zogby might correct me if I'm wrong, but that's just the way that I see it. I've covered politics down here for 15 years.
I 100% agree with you, John. I do. I think the makeup is totally different than what we've seen in previous elections. The state of Florida has seen a growing trend of Puerto Ricans, especially in Orlando, registering primarily as independents, but I think a lot of them are going to go towards Clinton. It's very different than what we saw in previous elections.
You know, John Zogby, I wonder if what John Bachman and Miranda Connor are saying is true. I kind of want to argue with them because it plays into a little pet peeve of mine, which is identity politics. And having been a reporter and talked about the immigration issue and reported on the immigration for a long time, I know for a fact when you get into the issue of immigration, you can't get a block of Hispanics who all agree. There's disagreement within the Hispanic community about what we should do with immigration law. So, to their point, if we have more Hispanics showing up in Florida, we have a higher black turnout. Does that necessarily translate into a Clinton victory? I know traditionally it does, but what do you think this time around?
No, I think traditionally it does, and it would, but you know, so far this is speculation. That's the numbers of registered voters, and I do believe you're going to get a very large Latino vote throughout the country. The question mark is about young African Americans. Those are the ones who are still not sold on Clinton. But I want to go back to the early vote in Florida, where the interpretations are all over the place. The Latino vote is 2 percentage points over where it was in 2012. So far, the African American vote is 3 percentage points lower than where it was in 2012. Now, we'll watch today, obviously, and see if Latinos in greater numbers and African Americans in greater numbers are going to turn out to vote today. But thus far, the early vote is not pointing, in fact, if anything, the total early vote is pointing to a slight trend in Donald Trump's favor. Republican is not as behind at going into Election Day as Romney was in 2012.
Actually, that's interesting.
But as John knows,
guys.
there's always a lag in these polls, John. And you know, now that James Comey has come out definitively, with so many people waiting to vote in places like Pennsylvania and Florida to the last minute, I wonder if that takes it off the table. The momentum that Donald Trump had, the wind at his sails, was certainly due in part to this cloud hanging over Hillary Clinton. That seems to have cleared up a little bit. And you know, I feel like if she were concerned about Florida, she would have been down here herself instead of just sending Barack Obama instead of being in places like Michigan.
But she has spent a lot of time here.
Of course,
said that.
it's important. There's no question about it.
But the makeup of Florida is so different. I mean, you have northern Florida, which is primarily going to be Trump country, and then southern Florida, which is going to be going much for Hillary Clinton.
Right. The transit strike apparently, though, is over.
Really quickly, before we get out of Florida, John Bachman and Miranda, I'd love to hear from y'all. Do you think that Rubio is going to be reelected? The numbers I've seen indicate a tightening in that race. Is Rubio back up as a senator from Florida?
Definitely see Rubio getting elected, and I think you're going to see a reverse coattail effect and a split ticket vote. You know, Ana Navarro, the conservative Latina from Florida, came out saying she's voting for Hillary Clinton. I imagine for every Ana Navarro we hear from, there's probably 3 or 4 others who may have voted for Romney last time around, won't vote, will not.
Got to
be voting
jump
for
out,
Donald
guys.
Trump.
John and Miranda, we're going to hear a lot more from y'all throughout the day. John Zogby, thanks for being here. What does a Trump presidency mean for the country? How about a Clinton administration? The writers who know Washington best will be here to tell us in hour 2 of America Talks Live, coming right up. Don't go away.